Your podcast or YouTube channel is one of the most valuable assets you own. But do you actually own it? Imagine spending years building your brand, growing your audience, and creating content, only to find out that someone else trademarked your podcast or channel title before you did. Now they legally own it, and you're blocked from registering it yourself. You might even be forced to change your name, or worse yet, you could be looking at years of legal battles and massive costs just to try to win back something that should have been yours all along. Well, it happens more often than you think, and it's completely avoidable. In this episode, I'm going to show you why trademarks are essential for content creators and podcasters, and what happens if you don't act in time, and the exact steps you need to take to protect your podcast or channel before someone else does. All right, let's jump in. Hi, I'm Gordon Firemark, the podcast lawyer, and this is Legit Podcast Pro, where I try to share tips with you that will help you create better and safely. All right, what is trademark and why does it matter? Well, a trademark is a form of legal protection that gives you exclusive rights to your podcast's or channel's name or logo or slogan. It means that no one else in your industry, meaning in this case, the podcasting or online content creation, entertainment, education segment, can legally use that name without your permission. Think of it as putting a fence around your brand. It keeps copycats, competitors, and even accidental infringers from confusing your audience. Now, many podcasters and creators think, well, I've been using my title for a long time, so it's mine, right? Well, not necessarily. Under U.S. law, trademark rights do typically belong to the first person to use the name in commerce. But if someone else registers it first, they could block you from obtaining full protection for your brand. And even though you might be able to challenge them, proving prior use in a legal dispute is expensive and time-consuming. And that is why registering your trademark as early as possible is so important. If you don't lock it down, someone else might lock you out. And once they do, your options become far more complicated and expensive. So here's the first thing. The big mistake is that thinking that your podcast or channel title is automatically yours. This is a big misconception I hear from podcasters and creators all the time. They think that the title, because they've been using it, that they will continue to be able to use it automatically. Let's be clear. Just because you use a name doesn't mean you have legal rights to own and use it exclusively. And here's why. Imagine two podcasters start using the same title, but they're in different parts of the country. Neither of them knows the other exists. Well, first podcaster thinks, well, I've been using this for years, so I don't need to register a trademark. And the second podcaster files for that trademark with the United States Patent and Trademark Office, the USPTO. Well, guess what happens next? Now, the second podcaster now has exclusive rights to the title at the national level, and that means that the first podcaster could be forced to rebrand, or even though they were using the title first. Or they could try to challenge it, but that's a legal fight that can cost tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in attorney's fees and litigation costs. This is exactly why waiting to register your trademark is such a huge mistake. So let me start by telling you a little bit of a story about the podcaster who waited too long. This is a real story about one of my clients. This podcaster had been running his show successfully for almost 15 years. He had a dedicated audience, a strong brand recognition, and sponsors who trusted him. And one day, he learned that a company had filed a trademark application for his podcast title. Now, at first he wasn't all that worried. After all, he'd been using the name for well over a decade. Surely that would mean he had superior rights. Yeah? Well, not quite, because he had never officially registered his trademark. He now had to go through a long and difficult legal process to prove he'd been using the title in commerce before the other guys had. It took us 4 years of legal battles, delays, and thousands of dollars in attorney's fees before we were finally able to secure the rights for this podcast title. If he had just registered his trademark earlier, none of this would have been able to happen, and it wouldn't have been a necessary battle. So here's the right way to secure your trademark before it's too late. If you want to protect your podcast or content brand, here's what you need to do. Step 1 is to search. You're searching for conflicts. Before launching your podcast or channel, ideally, but as soon as you decide you're going to keep it and protect it, check to make sure the title isn't already being used by somebody who's beaten you to it. Do a thorough search. Do Google and social media, but also search the USPTO trademark database, and sometimes a more comprehensive search is important. If someone else is using that title, especially if they have a registered trademark, but not only if it's registered, it's better that you find this out now before you've built your brand into something big, right? Okay, you don't want to have to rebrand. Now, assuming that it's all clear and it looks good, you should register your trademark. Once you confirm that your title is available, file for a federal trademark. This will give you exclusive ownership of that title in your particular market segment, this entertainment education category that I was talking about. It'll also give you the legal right to stop others from using it, and adds value to your asset library if you ever do decide you want to sell, license, or expand your brand, your product line, your services, or your business as a whole. So, why should you work with a trademark lawyer? Well, filing for a trademark might sound pretty simple, but it is a legal process that requires a certain degree of precision and, frankly, just understanding the system. Lots of people try to do it themselves and make mistakes that end up costing them more time and money than it would have involved if they had just brought in a lawyer. A trademark lawyer will be able to ensure that your application is properly filed and that it has the best chance of approval. A lawyer can also help you choosing the right categories for filing, responding to any challenges or office actions the USPTO may throw your way, and enforcing your trademark if someone else tries to steal your brand. Working with a professional from the start can save you from costly mistakes down the road. So, what I want you to do is take action to protect your brand today. If you're serious about growing your podcast or YouTube channel, protecting your brand isn't optional. It is essential. You've worked hard to build your audience and establish your identity, so don't leave it vulnerable to someone else trademarking it before you do. So here's what you need to do today. First, download my free trademarks guide for podcasters. Head on over to podcasttrademark.com. And if you're ready to get serious about protecting your podcast or channel, schedule a consultation with me. Go on over to firemark.com/trademarks. Don't wait until someone else trademarks your title before you do. Protect your brand now. Okay, well, that's it for this episode of Legit Podcast Pro. Thanks for being with me. And I'll see you again next week with another tip, strategy, those kinds of things to help you make sure that your podcasting is at the top of its game. I'll see you again soon.